I want to talk about the interesting fight, the pulmus that happened in Yerushalayim in 1848. It has to do with the sugya of Mol v'lei Taval, a ger who's in the process of becoming a ger and isn't yet completely a ger. I figure it's appropriate Shavuos time. There's a lot of Geirus involved connections to Shavuos. All of us, theoretically, on some level or another, became Gerim around Shavuos time. At least we might have all been Mol v'lei Tavals until Shavuos, by Har Sinai. I think it's an appropriate time to talk about it. It's a fascinating story with so many different characters and personalities and details. I just hope that we'll get to the Torah. So let's I'm on Haven and we'll see how far we can get in Mitzvah Shem. So this was like a mystery. There's many tshuvas from 1848, from the spring of 1848 and following that, about a Geirus that happened in Yerushalayim. And I'll tell you how the story was always told. There was a ger Morocai, which sounds like Morocco, a ger from Morocco, a Moroccan Arab, I guess, who came to Yerushalayim and wanted to become a ger. And during 1848, he had his milah. Now, the general process, certainly in those days, without good medicine, and in a place like Yerushalayim, the general process was to allow the surgery of the milah to heal for several weeks, maybe even longer, and only then to do the milah, so that it's really Gemara and it's Paskin in the Rambam Shulchan Aruch, but it's also good practice to let the wound heal properly, so that the water doesn't irritate it. A mikveh in Yerushalayim, we'll leave the rest unsaid. So that it doesn't irritate the makam amila and cause him to get an infection. This ger was going about his business. Shabbos came, and he had a big nidin. If he's allowed, he was living in a little hovel in Yerushalayim, a cold, broken down hovel. The wind, was blowing into the window. He was cold. He was ill. What did you say? A dira, exactly. And he wasn't sure if he's allowed to have a guy turn on make a fire for him on Shabbos. And he sent Shiloh to the Rav. The Rav, his name is Rav Asher Lemel Levi. He's actually a Polish Yid. Levi sounds like some sort of Svardish name, but he's not. He's a Polish Yid. His father Dreizich in Lublin. He was not a chassid of the Chayz. There's actually a cute story about them, but maybe we'll save that. But he was a Yid, a Polish Yid. He lived in Yerushalayim. The Shaila came to him. He was on the Ashkenazi Bezdin, and he said, Nishnar, could he call a guy? He is a guy, and he should turn on the fire on his own. Guy Sheshavas is Chayiv Misa. And he didn't just leave it at that. He sent the Shliach, and he made sure, he saw it through. Made sure that his psak of treating this ger as a guy should be seen through to the end. Now, this ger was Eismensch from the story. He was terrible. He went to complain by various Rabbanim, and first the Sephardi Bezdin got involved and said that they're going to put this Ashkenazi Sharav in the Zifa. Eventually, he was Kamaskim to send letters to other Rabbanim. They sent letters to the Chidush Arim, to Shmuel Salan, to the Archaner, to various different Paiskim and Gedolim in Europe, and they got answers back. Almost all of them did not agree with this Rav. They did not agree with the Psak of the Rav, some very strongly. And rather, Rav Asher Lemel Levi does not have a long life. He's nifter a few short years later. And the story that continues on posthumously as a debate, in the Svarim of the Achronim, as a fascinating debate. Now, this is something I'd rather have heard as a kid. My father he's from the first to crack this. Now, today, I think this is common knowledge, that Ger Morocai is a toyus. It's Ger Americai. It's an American Ger. It's not a Moroccan Ger, it's an American Ger. This American Ger has a name. His name is Cresson. You could look him up. His name is Cresson. He's a fascinating guy. He started off as Cresson. He was a Quaker, like the denomination of Christians called Quakers. He was an activist. He lived outside Philadelphia. He had a big farm. He wrote many books. He traveled the world. Very, very colorful fellow, until he ended up in Yerushalayim in 1848 and became known as Boaz Yisrael. I forgot his third name. Boaz Yisrael something. Sounds like a real guy. Yeah, Cresson became Boaz Yisrael. I forgot the third name, but he's a guy. And what's fascinating about him is that his Geirus is the subject of a Pennsylvania Supreme Court case, which is fascinating. Not because of the Mol v'lei Tavel aspect. They didn't weigh in on this Machlekes Achronim. But basically, his family sued to have him taken off his assets. Cresson was a relatively wealthy man. He owned a large farm. He invented actually some little farming techniques that worked well for him. He owned a large farm outside Philly. And his family, his children, his wife and his children sued that when they heard he became a ger in Yerushalayim, that his assets should be taken away from him, put into receivership, and his family should be in charge of them. Why? Because they said, what type of man in his right mind goes to Jerusalem in 1848 and becomes a convert to Judaism? It just doesn't check out. He's obviously not shafui bedat. He's not. Something's not right upstairs. and he's in no position to be controlling his assets, and they want to take him out. And this made it to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, which actually, in a landmark case for freedom of religion, ruled that changing religions does not prove insanity. A person could have a change of heart. He could think of one religion is better than another religion. That doesn't make him insane, and he shouldn't lose control of his assets. Now, probably he was closer to insane than not insane, based on everything else in his life. He was appointed by President James Polk in 1840 something to be the American ambassador to Palestine, or not ambassador. It wasn't even a country. It's not a country. So it was going to be like the American a council to what did I say? Yeah. 8 days later, he went on a ship and started traveling there. 8 days later, President Polk did a little more research about him and rescinded his consulship, but he came with a big American flag and a consul stamp. And he set himself up an office in Yerushalayim as the Counselor General of the United States to Palestine. He intervened in all sorts of Inyan Alma that was happening in Yerushalayim, on behalf of the American, United States government, of which he had almost no contact with. Keep in mind, contact in those days was difficult, on a good day, especially if you're not even sanctioned as the Council of the United States. He wrote all sorts of books trying to convince other non-Jews that the Mashiach's coming and it's the time, and he was part of a certain sect. He fought missionaries in Yerushalayim. He's a fascinating character in his life. He has a name, he's a person, his story really existed. Now, the shaila about this fateful Shabbos in the spring of 1848 in Yerushalayim is a shaila that, went on its own track. Now, I want to handle that nidin a little bit. Rabbi Shalomel, who paskin that he has to be Mechal Shabbos, wrote a few tshuvas and sent them out to different people. And Rabbi Shalomel did a pretty thorough job. Ba'agada, b'halacha, b'svara, meaning he really went through the sugya top to bottom. Unfortunately, Rosh Hashanah's tshuvas don't really survive in their full glory. It's only the snippets that other poskim quote him from, meaning the Aruch LaNer, who was in charge of a rabbinic newspaper called Shem Tzia and Anemon, published many letters. The Shem Tzia and Anemon took particular interest in the shaila and talked about it a lot. So the Aruch LaNer, quote texts, he brings quote texts from Rosh Hashanah, so a lot of Rosh Hashanah's teichen, but not the full tshuva. The letter that he sent to Shmuel Salant, who was younger than him but was the more senior Rav in Yerushalayim, even though he was younger than him. Shmuel Salant came to Yerushalayim in his low 30s and was very talented, obviously, and a big genius. And he rose to the position of being the manig, Ad Kedikach, in 1848. Shmuel Salant came in 1842 or something as a 31-year-old young man. I could be off a drop with the years, but not much. In 1848, he was already traveling back in Europe, in Poland, and Lithuania, etc., trying to raise money for the Kodelim in Yerushalayim. He was the main player, and the letter that he sent to Shmuel Salant while he was in the while he was in the Chiddushei Rim's house, is also not fully preserved. But again, snippets. Shmuel Salant's tshuva itself is not fully preserved. Snippets. Rabbi Chimchel Togachinsky, who everybody owes something to, he was an anical through marriage of Shmuel Salant. He brings what his Zayda's exact opinion was, because it was some sort of mavucha. The Aruch LaNer in Shem Ratzion and Nemon and in Binyan Tzin and his Chuvas wrote about it extensively. The Chelkas Yayev wrote about it. Many poskim weighed in on the shaila, and I want to sample a little bit. I don't know if we're going to be able to touch the shaila b'shleimusa. There's really a lot of elements, but there's two very chikava details that the shaila hinges upon, and Rabbi Shalomel raises both of these details, and they both have to do with machlokes that Rabbi Kiva Eiger had with Drush Svarim. To me, that's a shtickle theme over here. Rabbi Kiva Eiger, in two places, takes something seen in a drush sefer, takes it very seriously, the halacha, deals with it, argues with it, and based on these machleksim, will happen afkamina to the shayla. So I want to go through it one by one. The Panim Yafis, the Hafla, who wrote many strict halachas for him, also wrote the sefer Panim Yafis al Torah. Now, Panim Yafis al Torah is a drash sefer. In theory, it's not a chassidish sefer; it's a drash sefer. The Hafla was a chassidish yid, but it's not a chassidish sefer. It's drash. It's more of an old style drash type of sefer. Divrei Agada, etc. Now, the Panim Yafis was not published b'chai the Hafla. It was published by Ephraim Zalman Margolius, actually, the Rav of Brod. He wasn't really the Rav, but whatever. Ephraim Zalman Margolius in Brod published the Panim Yafis, after the Panim Yafis was nifter, and he sent a copy of it to Reb Kiva Eiger, who he was close with, to review. And Reb Kiva Eiger took issue with a particular zach the Panim Yafis says that has a big nafkaminus. I want to show the Panim Yafis says like this. There's a Panim Yafis in Parshas Noach. It says like this. The pasuk says, "Yom v'layla lo yishbaisu." By Noach, Yom v'layla lo yishbaisu. The fact the Panim Yafis as follows: Amru Rabbi Seinu b'Sanhedrin daf nun chasam and beis goyish shavas chayiv misa. First, the Gemara din at Sanhedrin. The Gemara says a goyish shavas chayiv misa. Amru Rav Huna filu b'sheni b'Shabbos. Fine. The fact there as follows: how is it possible that Avram Avinu One second. In fact, how is it possible? He follows. He says, "Shu shvisis kol yom cholal shachar v'shmir Shabbos shel Avram Avinu." I forgot we can't find the place where he asked it, but this seems to be my thing over here, my shtick. But he asks Avram Avinu. Chazal tell us the Gemara in Yuma that Avram Avinu was Mekayim Kol Torah Kula before it was given, right? So he says, how is it possible that Avram Avinu was Mekayim Kol Torah Kula? Yom v'layla leishbaisu. It's an isser. Avram Avinu can Mekayim things that are optional, do a mitzvah, but to be over the isser of Yom v'layla leishbaisu, how is Avram Avinu able to do that before Matan Torah? So says the Haflah as follows. It says Merdi Kichidish. The Haflah says that before the Torah was given to Yidden, Laila meant Yom v'layla. Like it says in the pasuk, Yom v'layla lo yishbaisu. A day followed by the night. Once the Torah was given to Yidden, then it became Laila v'Yom, right? Everything on the Jewish calendar is day, night and day. So says the Haflah, the Isser of Yom v'Layla lo yishbaisu that's on a guy is only to be Shavis his Shabbos. To be Shavis would be for him Shabbos morning through Motzei Shabbos would be Shabbos for a guy. A guy who Shavis that is Chayiv Mises. Says Avram Avinu kept Yiddish Shabbos and kept week like a guy. So he was never over keeping Shabbos. I mean, this is the Haflah's Chiddush that Yom v'Layla lo yishbaisu, the Isser of Shvisa on Shabbos for a guy is only to keep it Goyish Shabbos, meaning a day and a night that follows it, not a night with a day that follows it. That's how the Haflah says it. And the Haflah repeats this Chiddush. He likes this Chiddush. He says this Chiddush a few times in the Panami office. Now, Reb Kveger in a tshuva, a very serious tshuva about a very, very, very serious shaila, brings this Haflah, B'shulei Hagilion, like at the end, he says, Achshav Re'isi, and he's chaylik on it, and he has a pretty stark araya connected to the Haflah. Now, the Haflah, before I just say Rishor Reb Kveger, the Haflah himself asks on himself a good kasha. He says, Hine, a Taisis of Sanhedrin, there's a Taisis in Sanhedrin on Daf Nun Tes that says as follows. The Gemara says, Kol mitzvah, shenemrav le'nishnis, li'Yisrael nemrav le'lev ne'nayach. There's a klal, any mitzvah that Terry gave, and it says it for a ben Noach, and it doesn't repeat it later on for the Yid, then it's only for the Bnei Noach. Frak Taisvis, it's Yisrael Nemrav Leil B'Nerach. It's only for Yid and not for Goyim. Frak Taisvis, Yom v'Layla Leish Baisu, that mitzvah was not ever repeated for the Yidden, so it must be for Yidden. So then why is it also for Goyish Shavas? So Zak Taisvis Teretz, it's like a little Taisvis. Taisvis Avik Chavim Shavas L'Shayach Kan, the Yisrael Huzru Lishbais. Because Yidden were Muzur to be Shavis on Shabbos. That's what Taisvis says. So Frak Ta'aflan himself, V'inei L'fi Masha Kasavnu, Ein Hachach Mizeh. So the Yiddish Shabbos is not a steer to Goyish Shabbos. You can't tell me that this can't be included because Yidden got a mitzvah lahedi to be Shabbos. Taisva says Minei Ubei. This can't be talking about Yidden because Yidden got lahedi a mitzvah to keep Shabbos. So it can't be the mitzvah of the Isser of Yom v'Layla Shvoisu applies to them. Minei Ubei doesn't make sense. According to me, there could be still a mitzvah for Yidden of Yom v'Layla Shvoisu Goyish Shabbos. Don't be Shabbos day followed by the night, but be Shabbos night and day. According to my shtickle Torah, my chiddush. This is Haflah asks on himself. So Haflah, a very interesting teretz. He's a creative teretz. He brings his Yerushalmi that talks about Tisha B'Av being Yom Kippur being Chal on Erev Shabbos. He says the case where it's Negeya, where Shabbos precludes you from this, is Yom Kippur that fell out on Erev Shabbos. It's not possible for a Yid to keep Shabbos if he's not over Yom V'Layla Leish Baisu. Memela Taisus is mechiach that this pasuk cannot be true, can't be talking about Yidden. It must be talking about Goyim. That's Taisus Echach. He says Yom Kippur Shechal B'Erev Shabbos. Basically, you have two Shabbosim in a row. That's where it's not possible. This is the Haflah's Einfall. It's a chiddush. He brings a raya from Yerushalmi. It's a creative shtickle Torah, as I state. Now, Reb Kveger in a tshuva, in the end of Arachayim, in the end of Chelik Aleph of Reb Kveger, brings a fascinating thing. Now, this tshuva has a little bit of a backstory, and just I can't go by without sharing it. So the tshuva has a little bit of a backstory. It's a tshuva that was the shaila was asked from Reb Michal Hazenfort, who I don't know anything about. Maybe other people know who he is. The shaila was asked from him, who sent the shaila to Rav Chaim Volozhiner and to Reb Kveger. He sent the shaila to two people, to Rav Chaim Volozhiner and to Reb Kveger. And the shaila was about non-Jewish help that lives in the house that behaves mamish like Jews, and oftentimes they end up being megayer. It's like these girls; they were taking a girl to help with the household. Eventually, the girl would get very used to the schedule of a Jewish household, and eventually they would be megayeres. This is what the seems common practice was. And they sent the shaila to Rav Chaim Volozhiner and to Reb Kveger to ask the shaila. Now, Rav Chaim Volozhiner, and today this tshuva from Rav Chaim Volozhiner, it's published in tshuva of Rav Chaim Volozhiner. It's tshuva Yadalit over there. He has a shena tshuva. Reb Kveger in Madura Kama in tshuva Kuf Mem Aleph, I think, or Kuf Chaf Aleph. Reb Kveger has a tshuva on the topic. Now, what's interesting is Reb Chaim Volozhiner's tshuva is mostly responding to Reb Kveger. Meaning every point, Reb Kveger is a long tshuva, every point Reb Kveger raised, Reb Chaim Volozhiner is mostly responding to him. Now, in the Taklim Chadatin from Reb Yisrael Mishklav, who was one of the primary Talmidim of the Goyin, he brings down that Reb Kveger sent a shaila to Reb Chaim Volozhiner to ask him what to do about this Nidin. And Reb Chaim Volozhiner responded to him X, Y, and Z. And you see from this how much the Gedolim were machshav of Chaim Volozhiner, and then we're sending him the shaylas. Now, it's like an interesting little squabble. The Reb Shlomo Eger writes as follows: Shamati talunis rabim. I heard people complaining. Asher him alinim al hagayve de kila kadesh of alajin. Kvay de Rav Amunach merin Rav Chaim Zatzal. Al kiro sefer echad taklim chadat in shmoi. Sham somehow mechaber mixes mitzvah zu shaila ki l'shal shal kvay de abba mari niriyah shaila zu kvay Rav Alajin. In that tshuva sefer, in taklim chadat, it was presented as if my father Reb Eger, this is Reb Shlomo Eger when he put out the sefer, is writing this, as if my father asked from Chaim Volozhiner the shaila. V'hemed dever harav hanal derech tshuva al mashenishal me'adoni avimari. Ratza mechaber b'zel harbis kvay the Rav Volozhiner. And the mechaber they wanted to be marber the kvay of Chaim Volozhiner to show that Reb Eger was asking him shailas. Leimer shagam adoni avimari meirit zelav she'iloisa. V'arayim haminu shayad Rav atzim malazeh. And the people, I don't know who the people thought that Reb Chaim Volozhiner himself misrepresented this conversation. It's fascinating because Gedolei Olam we're talking about. It's the highest tier Gedolei Olam. Reb Shlomo Eger wrote this, and he says as follows: I know that that's not true. Rav Chaim Volozhiner, when the Sefer Taklim Chadatin came out, and Rav Chaim Volozhiner himself saw that it was presented like Reb Eger asked him a shayla, he himself sent a letter to my father. Here b'ledaber ba'anova gedolah v'nefla, bacha v'tzar kekruchi al zeh ha'mechaber v'sipar ha'maisa eichayev. Rav Chaim Volozhiner wrote a sad ksav snatzlos to Reb Eger, being snatzl that Chalila I didn't have anything to do with making it look like you asked me a shayla. I know you never asked me the shayla, and I didn't make it look like you asked me the shayla. Kishama shehisig, he said, Rav Chaim Volozhiner said, I heard that the guy of Hassenfort, the Sir Michal, asked you also. And Rav Chaim Volozhiner said, before I write a tshuva, let me at least see what Reb Eger, let me see what the guy in Adar wrote about it. And he asked Reb Eger's tshuva to be sent to him. This is the. I'm sorry, I don't know if Reb Shlomo Eger wrote this. Reb Shlomo Eger is quoted over here, so it's another son of Reb Eger. This is right. It's just a fascinating little sidebar to the tshuva. It's in the end of the tshuva. It's the last thing in tshuva's Reb Eger, Chelik Aleph, in Kama, is this thing. And now in the new print of Chaim Volozhiner's tshuva, in the bottom they have it also, the both sides of the story. But in any case, in this tshuva about this shver shaila, about these girls who live in the houses and are thinking about becoming Geirim, Reb Eger has a whole line of tshuva, and then at the end of it he says as follows: Achers man Rav nitvas me'agayin Rav Pinchas Hatzal seif upon him yafas al Torah. Kasav Parshas Nayach, that's hard the Yom V'Layla Yishboisi Rakshla Yir Shefsim Kol Yom V'Layla Shel Achra. And in there he writes this chiddush that the Azhar of Yom V'Layla Yishboisi only applies for the day with the night after. V'Hadakas V'Taisus Sanhedrin. This Taisvis, that's talking about Yom Kippur Shechal b'Shabbos. Yom Kippur Shabbos Shechal Achra Yom Kippur. Right, when Yom Kippur falls at first, Shabbos follows it. That's what that's talking about. The Taisus. Ulam Lanias Daiti Ein Kiyim L'Divrei Hagayin Hanal. Tzadnish Kenetet Confused. Reb Eger says. Demkein Adayin Yikshel Reish Lakish. This is such a classic Reb Eger kash. According to Reish Lakish, this Svirulei. Chati shir mutam in Atayra. According to Rish Lakish, it holds the Chati shir is mutam in Atayra. So I was very effective. Kveger Mkain af b'yam Kippurim v'Shabbos smuchim la'adadi after likter b'yam Shabbos kechatzi gregors. Do a Chati shir of Malacha on Shabbos. Ubelayla shel achara of b'layim Kippur Chatzi gregors. Then do another Chatzi gregors on the next night. The Lagabe kolechad avi Chatzi shir. The Shabbos Yom Kippurim mitzvah from Kedisa Masisin decreases. Tzad Azhar the Yom V'Layla Yishbaisu mitzvah from Laktir Likki gregors. That it will qualify for mitzad Yom V'Layla Yishbaisu. V'Leishavsu Yom V'Layla Shel Acharav Mibli Asais Malacha Behem. Says the hafla is not going to hold up. According to Reish Lakish, that Chatzi shir is mutam in Atayra, you could have even in Yom Kippur that fell before Shabbos do half malacha on Yom Kippur, half malacha later on by night, and the hafla doesn't work. So Reb Eger is chaylik, and there's no answer to this kasha. According to Reish Lakish, this is a shvera time in the hafla. Now, let's take this to our sugi. So brings the Rosh Hashanah as follows. Rosh Hashanah says, according to the hafla's chiddush, the Yom V'Layla Yishbaisu by a guy is different than Shabbos for a yid, and he's matcha the kasha from Taisvis. This ger water Cresson could easily keep Shabbos. Every ger who's in the status of Malvulei Tava can keep Shabbos because he keeps a Yiddish Shabbos and he's Mechal Shabbos like a guy. Do a malach on Friday on Mitzvah Shabbos and you're good to go. As Isaac the Ma'irim and as Isaac ranked the Rosh Hashanah himself. This tying on himself. He says according to that law, this is an easy solution. Now he does bring that Reb Eger was chaylik already in the safla. Reb Eger was already mapchel the safla, and he also brings his own Another raya from a Tosfos that says as follows. He brings a raya from Tosfos like this, that Tosfos, I forgot which raya he brings, Tosfos in Yevamis, I think. He brings another raya from Tosfos in Yevamis, not like the Hafla, and he has another kash on the Hafla to be chalik. So this is Reb Kveger one that's arguing on a drush sefer, and based on the nafkamina, if you hold like Reb Kveger, you hold like the drush, comes with this nafkamina. Rather, I've told this to you once before, but I saw once a video of Rav Dov Landa talking to Reb Shaul Alter and learning. Great videos. There's a few of them, right? So one of the interesting parts I noticed in the conversation, Reb Shaul Alter is telling him over a hafla in Panam Yafis and asking him a kash on it, and he tells him over the haflu in Panam Yafis, a shriped, whatever thing, and Reb Dov, when he finishes talking, Reb Dov says, "Sim Panam Yafis," and he says, "Yeah, the haflu." And Reb Dov just goes right there. But there's a conversation that happened over there. Reb Dov told him, it's a drush. And he tells him, no, it's the hafla. And Melanie, Reb Kveger, if I see this Reb Kveger, you see Reb Kveger treated Panam Yafis like the hafla. It wasn't just a drush, because Reb Kveger handles it, mamish squarely in the crosshairs of a kasha with chatzi shir, and Reb Kveger takes it very seriously. Now, the second tidbit that comes from a drush that Reb Kveger takes extremely seriously and that could play a role in this machlokes is the Bakanta Gemara in Shabbos Daf Lamed Aleph. The Gemara over there tells us a Bakanta story with a ger who came in front of Hillel, and he wanted to be Niskaya, right? The ger comes to Hillel, he says, make me a ger. First he goes in Shammai, and he says, I'm an Ashari Kohen Gadol, and it says, the Gemara tells us, Shammai hit him with the Amas Abinyan Shabiyadeh, right? He was obviously in the middle of learning Eruvin, and he had Amas Abinyan in his hand, like a, what do you call it, like a, a thing, what do you say? Yeah, like a measuring stick, Amas Abinyan, whatever, he chased him out. Whatever he had in his hand, he chased him out. He goes to Hillel, and Hillel says, sure, Gaire. The Gemara says, Gaire. Hillel was Megaire. And then the Ger starts learning a little bit, and he sees that, who's allowed to be a Kohen Gadol is Nishazai Pashit. He says, Madach, the Ger understands, but he says, Yashakayach, thank you, Hillel, for bringing me in the Kampei Shechina, even though it was under, false pretenses, and you finagled what I needed, but thank you for seeing through the Zach. This is a Bakanta Gemara in Shabbos Daf Lamed Aleph, famous Gemara. Now, the Marsha Afanart has a famous kasha. The Marsha over there asks that there's a din that the Marsha has. He says as follows: "It says Zelashoyne miu ktas kasha. Ein mekabelin gerim." No. Sorry, 1 second. The Marsha has two kashas really. The Marsha says the kasha number one is ein mekabelin gerim mishum sholchim malachim. There's a din the Gemara in Yevamah says we don't accept the ger who's coming because he wants the good life. If he's from those who believe that all Jews are rich and that's why he's being megayer, you can't take him. You have to take him to somewhere where all Jews are not rich, and then we could talk. But Mishum Sholchim Malachim, you can't take a guy in. V'oid, you're not allowed to teach Torah to a guy. It's us to teach Torah to a guy. So what's going on over here? So the Marsha says over there, V'tzarech Leimar, Hadamrina Megaire Lav Dafka, El Legaire El Lebasa the Yada the Garas of a Kehenis. He taught him some basic Torah first. He gave him the score. He told him what's what, and after that he took him in as a ger. Imkain, Frek the Marsha, Eich Lamdu Torah Mekayim Shneskayer, Ay Hanachri Elim Torah Chayiv Misa. If this guy required education before he can become a ger, the guy's not allowed in Torah. Yesh Leimar, the Kivin Shabal Legayer, Shari Lum Torah. As I said in Marsha, since he came to be Megayer, it's already allowed to teach him Torah, which is a tremendous chiddush. Marsha is saying. Marsha is saying that once a guy is coming to learn Torah, I shouldn't say it's a tremendous chiddush. It's Maisim B'Chol. But yeah. What's the other option? Exactly, it's Maisim B'Chol. But the Marsha says this. I'll tell you why I say it's tremendous chiddush, because Marsha doesn't bring a raya. Marsha doesn't bring a Gemara, a Rambam, a place. Marsha just says Mistama Muzdach Zayin, that when the guy is coming the guy, you're allowed to teach him Torah already. That's what the Marsha learns in the Gemara. That's what he says. Now, Fraktim Kveger in the Tshuva Mem Aleph over here in Kama, and also over there, Ulam Kasavti Begilian Marsha, Bekushya, Ha'ed Mekablan Gerim, Bizalash, and then he brings a raya from Tosfos. He says Tosfos and Yevamis in two places already asks this question: how do you teach Torah to a ger? And Tosfos the Tirtzu, the Batuah Chaya Hillel, the Seifel L'Shem Shemayim. Hillel made an assessment. He made a character judgment over here, a judgment call. He looked at this guy. This guy's serious. He's committed. He's going to become a ger. I would say you're allowed to teach him Torah. I would say I'll be megayer him, as a pustakeli, and I'll fix him later. That's how. So exactly. Okay, says Tosfos is connected to Marsha. Marsha is not true. So you have a big machlokes over here between Reb Kveger and the Marsha. What's the procedure when a guy comes and he shows real interest in being a ger? Do you treat him already like you could teach him learning already? You could already teach him. You could already treat him with some sort of Yiddish halachas, or do you say no? You're megayer him on good faith, and later on you figure it out. Now, where will happen another nafkamina is the Gemara in Sanhedrin puts these two dinim of not teaching Torah to Yid and a Goy Shavas together. The Rambam and Malachim brings them together in the same ice. These are two mirror halachas. These are two unique relationships that Klal Yisrael has with the Torah and with Shabbos. They're two things that are not allowed. They're not open house. They're not allowed to be to stop anybody who wants to join. And l'chayra, like the Marsha, if the Marsha is saying that once a guy is coming to be a skier, we already treat him with some sort of openness and we let him learn Torah. L'chayra, by a Movel Taval, who's expressed a very high level of openness, right? He already is in the process of becoming a ger. You'd be able to already let him keep Shabbos, just like you're allowed to teach him Torah. Mashenkin, according to Kveger, that you're not allowed, we're Geirus in good faith, but we don't actually do anything. So you can't violate any halachas. Goy Shavas, teaching Torah to Goy. None of these things get suspended, even by a guy who wants to come to be a guy. This is the second machlekes of Kveger, and Rav Shalom in his Chuvas makes reference to this and says, l'chayra, according to the Marsha, you should be able to keep Shabbos, and he brings a raya connected to the Marsha. Now, what's interesting, I just want to point out, and this is really why I was trying to catch myself when I said it's a chiddush. Ramesh and Tshuva and Yeridei and Chelik Gimel and Tshuva Tzadik. Ramesh says as follows: he brings the Marsha, he brings the Kveger, he likes the Marsha. He says, one second, he says. I can't find this exact brach where Moshe says these words. He says like imki that the Rebbe Keger has a good taina and good that Tosfos and Yavav imki Rebbe Keger is a good taina. Halacha vade kehamarsha. This is the halacha is meaning put chazi like good kasha good taina. The halacha is zecher like the marsha. There's no way to take a guy in if you don't teach him something. He says I'm not saying you have to teach him every prima gadim and basa b'chalav, but you have to teach him something. He's got to be familiar with halachas. Otherwise it's impossible. You're going to make him a ger. He comes in right away. He's going to be over halachas every single day. I mean, what's the it's funny the way the Sprach of Moshe says like imki that Rebbe is saying good, but the halach is not like him. Klar, the halach is not like him. So in any case, the same thing. Rabbi Shalom met the same reaction. That imki, you have a taina on the marsha. The halach is like the marsha. That once a guy's holding by becoming a ger, we already are going to be over or loosen the restrictions relating to how we treat goyim, in Torah and l'chayra and Shabbos also. Now I see that in the back that someone was making faces because there are chalukim between Shabbos and Torah. But yeah. I see already there. Yes. Noted, duly noted. In any case, this is the two Kegers that are arguing on Mili Da'agada that Shalzach has a big enough community. I'll just wrap it up a little quickly over here. There's obviously many more sugis. There's a Gemara. The Gemara in Yivamas and the Memvav talks about Movel Etavo with the status, and the Gemara brings Machlekes Tanan. One man says he's considered a ger. And one Madama says, here, one second, I'll show you something interesting. It's a cute little diik. It's also probably not true, but it's cute. The Gemara says like this: Tan Rabbanan ger shemol v'lei taval. Rav Elazar ema harei ger. Sheken metzina b'aviseinu shemol v'lei tavlu. Taval v'lei mal. Rav Yeshua ema harei ger. Sheken metzina b'yimai shetavlu v'lei mal. V'cham v'imrim taval v'lei mal. Mal v'lei taval ein ger shemol v'yitful. So there's a machlekes over there 2 days, and then the Cham Margaret say anyone who's mal v'lei taval v'lei mal, it's not a geirus unless you do the whole process. Let's do the whole thing. Now, what's interesting is that the Gemara in two other places in Shas, in Brachas and in Kedushin, I believe, repeats this din of Mol v'lei taval ein ger, but with a little bit of a hisafa. The Gemara says, one second. That's the Gemara in Brachas. The Gemara in Brachas on Daf Mem Zayin says like this. It says, and it brings this din of Mol v'lei taval ein ger. It says, "V'kamad v'lei taval nachrihu." And likewise, the Gemara in Avodah Zarah says, "V'kivan v'lei taval evet kechavimhu." So Rosh Hashanah made a diak from here that even though the Gemara is mashma that it's some sort of gear, something's going on, you see that the Gemara when it chazes it over in other places like shtel zavek and when he didn't, he's a goy, meaning to tell you that he has full dine goyim. He doesn't have any dine Yisrael when it comes to this. Now the teretz, the Chuvas B'tzida is simple, is that both of those sugyas are not native to this discussion. When the Gemara is having the native, natural discussion about Marvel Taval, the Gemara doesn't add on any additives. It just brings the Machlekes, the Cham, Marvel Taval, and it's not a ger. It doesn't say any emphasis points. When the Gemara is handling a different shaila, and it brings a din from Marvel Taval, so then the Gemara extracts the din and says, Vice from this price that I just brought you, that Ad Shleimo, he's not a yid. And this is what all the Meshivim to the Archlenar does this, and all the Meshivim to Rosh Hashanah point out, is that that's not a diak. The Gemara in the home sugya, on home territory, when the Gemara is discussing the Shaila, doesn't have any of these dukim. It's later on, when the Gemara is borrowing this price for other needs, and the Gemara reiterates the outcome of the brisa. The Archlenar in his tshuva in Minyan Tzion, he actually does something interesting. He says, I hear your tinus. I like, Rabbi Shlomo wrote him, Maisi's a guy. It's Rosh Hashanah. I'll read you the quote that he brings from Rosh Hashanah. He says it's so succinct. He says, "Ibayisem Gemara, Ibayisem Svara. Ibayisem Gemara. I'll tell you how. Given the Kaimelon Kechachamim Ukrivyechanan and Nivamis, the Ene Gerard Shimel V'Yitvel, Ukamesh Kasav Rambam Misur Bi, over Tover Shulchan Aruch Yeredeis and Reish Tamachas, the Given the Kaimelon Kirishim and Levi Sanhedrin and Ches, Goish Shavas Chayiv Misa, the Chsiv Yom V'Lei Leish Boisu, and that's how the Rambam Paskin. So 1 + 1 = 2. It's not even a question. He's not a ger. A guy's not allowed to keep Shabbos. 1 + as now the Darach Laner in his answer here says something interesting. He says Chikarti b'shar mekoimis shemekablim gerim. I did research. I reached out to other Geirus Bateidinim. Geirus is not such an obscure shaila. It happens. I reached out to other Geirus Bateidinim, Shemekablim Gerim. There is no minig anywhere to be medactic that a guy who's in the middle of being megayer and is in the Mavlei Tavel circumstance shouldn't be. And then he goes on to bring some of the kashas, the rayas he's done, and some of these things that we were done in. But ultimately, the Aruch LaNer tells him that the minig is the minig. Rosh Hashanah says, "Ulai makom menichali liskader." Maybe this is my place. Maybe this is where they left me. Most of the Gedolei Poskim did not accept it, and I believe the halacha, like Ramesh says, the halacha is.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.